What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. How do you start a company and scale your sales and make your company interesting enough that a giant company wants to buy you? I know a lot of the CEOs listening are very interested in being acquired by other companies. And so today I'm excited to talk to a CEO who is also an engineer who founded a company that did get acquired. And she's going to tell us the story of how she started that company and all of the things that happened that made it possible. And then she's also going to tip us off to what her new adventure is. And I'm super excited about that because it's more in the world that I live in of helping sellers be better at what they do. So today I am excited to introduce to you Tracy Young. She's the co founder of TigerEye, which is her new company. But today we're going to talk about PlanGrid, where she was a CEO and co founder. But she has also been recognized by Forbes, which I think is pretty special for a woman in tech. As we know, there's just not enough of those around. So she was recognized by Forbes as a top 50 women in tech and a top 50 SaaS CEO by the SaaS report as well. So thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome, Tracy.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
I'm excited to hear about your journey. You know, it does happen, but it's really few and far between the companies that actually grow to be acquired by a huge company. And I know that everybody is dying to know exactly how you did it and what fun you had along the way, as well as some of the challenges that you had that you're willing to share with us. So, tell us, first of all, a little bit about PlanGrid and what it does. Being an engineer, I know you were interested in providing some technology for the construction industry. So, tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure thing. So I was a construction engineer by training. What that means is I had a hard hat, safety glasses, safety vests, and I was responsible for QA/QC of the construction project. Our superintendents led the project, they would build it, and then I would come in following them up and just making sure we built the right thing. And then before that, before they actually do any building, we make sure that the permits are in place. We make sure that materials are coming in a timely manner. We make sure that all our vendors and subcontractors have the right insurance and like safety training so that they can come on site. So, we were like paperwork people. Um, but it became really obvious, probably just year one in construction site that a lot of our inefficiencies were just because we weren't looking at the most current information. On the project that I was on, my first project, a hospital construction project in California, the initial set was 5,000 sheets. And I would say on average, maybe 50 to 100 sheets like new blueprints would come that would supersede, the old ones. Changes would happen for so many different reasons. Either you find something that's wrong in the initial designs, and then you update your design as the architect and engineers. It could be that the building owner is like, yo, I want this new equipment. And suddenly, 50 other sheets change because the requirements for that medical equipment is different. And so we were constantly just chasing people down, handing them new paper. And just looking around, it's like, wow, we're building the wrong thing everywhere. And it wasn't that we were all incompetent builders. It was just that we couldn't figure out what was the new set of information when there's so many changes happening every single day, every single week. And the cloud existed. Steve Jobs announces the first generation iPad in 2010. And my co-founders and I were just, it was a miracle we knew each other. We were two construction engineers and three incredibly talented software engineers. And we looked at the iPad and we thought, hey, I think this can solve what we're experiencing in the field. Let's go build it. And that was the start of PlanGrid. And I think what was ended up being really beneficial to us was that it was just a fun project. It was just a fun project the 5 of us could work on. Um, I take that back. Maybe a couple of my co-founders really felt that it could become a real big business. I don't think it wasn't until we made like 10 million in annual recurring revenue, and this would have been at least 4 or 5 years in to the business where I thought to myself, "Wow, they were right. We can actually build a massive company out of what we have created."
So, like many founders, you were working in a business and saw a problem that needed to be solved. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like you guys were just drowning in paper and trying
Mhm,
to keep up with the changes as fast as you
mhm,
could. I mean, that's amazing. And I know just going through a little kitchen remodel, how many changes we have, right? So I can't
mhm.
imagine on a huge construction site for a hospital or something where the changes are just constant and trying to keep up with that. So did you continue working in construction while you were starting your company, or did you or a few of you, quit and say I'm just going to work on this full time? Tell us about how that worked.
Yeah, we were really lucky in that we were young and single, and we were all engineers, and we were all very frugal. Um, so we had a good amount of savings in our bank accounts, all of us. And we said, "Hey, let's just quit our jobs. It sounds really fun to build together. Let's just quit our jobs, work on the startup." And I think we had something like 18 months of runway apiece. It's
Right.
really helpful when you keep your personal cash burn low, right? Like we
Yeah,
all got
that's
rid of our
very rare. I'm sure you've heard other founders talk. That is just so rare, really. Tracy,
yeah.
because most people don't have that runway, but how phenomenal that you did.
Yeah, yeah, and it helped that all our parents were incredibly supportive, so we all moved back in with our parents. Some of us were, we actually moved from, like, house to house, because we're constantly working together, and, yeah, we just decided to give ourselves 18 months, and let's see what we can build, and we never well, we sold the company, but for 10 years, almost 10 years, we didn't stop working on PlanGrid, and, I mean, it feels now, as I talk about it, it feels like lifetimes ago, um and I'm happy to share, this has been my most of my adult life. It's made me into who I am today, and I'm happy to share the lessons learned that have come with that.
So when you all first quit your jobs and were working on it, I'm sure you were building software in the beginning, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were
And
writing
so
code for users. That's all we did.
you did what?
We were writing code and talking to users.
Okay. Oh, so really important point. So writing code wasn't all you were doing. You were talking to users because you wanted to write code that would really make a difference for them, I'm sure. So you were shaping it as you learned from those users.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So when did you actually start selling? How long did it take before you felt confident that you had the software ready to go and people could start using it?
Oh, it's a really good question. So the initial users of PlanGrid were all friends of ours who we had worked with on the job site. And by that point, everyone was on different companies at different construction projects. And we just handed PlanGrid to them and said, "Hey, why don't you just test this out for me? Just tell me what you like, what you don't like, and I'm going to try to build something awesome for you." It didn't take very long. I think the paper problem is very obvious to everyone, especially when you're literally, as you said, drowning in paper. Suddenly you have the entire current set version control is solved in other industries. We solved it for construction. The entire current set is on your iPad and then later Android device and Windows device. Um, so the moment we decided to ask our friends for money was the moment when they started using words like, "I love this product. I love PlanGrid. I don't know how we were building before I was using, before PlanGrid." And I was like, "Okay, well, we're ending beta next week. We're ending private beta next week. Will you pay this much for it?" And most of them converted to paying users, which was really awesome for us. Of course, at that point, we didn't know anything about enterprise software. We priced it way too low, which would change over the next 9 years. But that was the catalyst. Was the moment we knew they weren't going to finish their projects without our software.
Isn't that wonderful? The moment your customer says, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I can't live without it. I really need it," right? It's the moment every CEO waits for. And I think sometimes Especially after we've been in it a couple of years, we sort of forget about those moments. They're so important to us in the beginning when we start our companies, but then later on we're just selling, right? And keeping things moving. And we forget to get those moments and really appreciate them and then use those as momentum. So, all right, you sold it,
Mhm.
for way less than you should have. Not unusual, but people were using it. So now you had people who would say how great it was and give you testimonials. And when did you really start to get in motion and sell to people that you didn't know?
Mm. So there's this natural virality that happens in construction projects where there's, and especially for a hospital construction project, there's like over the course of 5 years, 5,000 people might come and go. So there's just a lot of people on job sites, and construction folks really like showing off their new shiny tools. And PlanGrid was so cool at the time. Mind you, this is like 2012. Something as simple as digitization of the construction set. People just wanted to show off their new tablet. They wanted to show off the software that they were using for their work. And word of mouth was huge for us. And partially it's because we built something people truly wanted, something people truly loved. And they would just be they would be somehow connected to the first, let's say, 50 customers ours, people that I hadn't met before, I didn't build with, but had somehow worked with other people. It was like 2 degrees away from the initial 50 users. Um, and our product demoed really well. So, it took 5 minutes or something to get their jaw to drop. So this is very powerful, I think, in our ability to
Yeah.
just show them what we had. It was like, "Oh, you can do this and like this," and they're like, "Wow, that's great. I need that." I think was we really just nailed product market fit. I mean, it was such a simple product, right? It's like, look at all these reams of blueprints. You don't need that anymore. You should buy a tablet and like use our software to build. Um,
So
so
that
anyways,
worked
to
out
answer your
really well. Your networks really made you the money because you knew these people, they trusted you, they were willing to try it, not just because they knew you, but because they saw right before their eyes how much easier this was gonna make their life, and so it was pretty quick and easy. So would you say that was probably like 1, 2, 3 years in, working just off people that you knew to and the virality, like you said, to get the product out there?
It was like 3 months. We
Oh,
were initially with people we had known, and then it just sort of spread. In fact, I found one of my old notebooks and took a picture of what looks to be our sales playbook from PlanGrid from 2016. I posted it on Twitter, and someone actually went through and looked at every single word I had written on this, like, page, and he reminded me, he's like, "There's no out you guys didn't have outbound at PlanGrid. Are you sure about that?" And it was like, "Actually, yeah, you're right. We didn't have outbound at PlanGrid," which is kind of remarkable for an enterprise software company. Every again, people that we also really benefited from people finishing up on a project and then going to other projects and taking their tool with them. And so it was almost, of course, we would see some churn from projects ending, but then we would also see net new logos and net new construction projects signing up with PlanGrid afterwards. Especially if there's, a Canvas super, especially if a superintendent is going there on a new project. That was always a win for us.
yeah. So everybody wishes, right, that they could start their company and have all that inbound. But it really speaks to product market fit. You really solved a problem that needed to be solved. I mean, sometimes we're making the next iteration of or something that isn't brand new, maybe a bit more of a nice to have than a need to have. And so it does require some outbound or some education, some things that make the sales cycle longer. With PlanGrid, what you built was something so needed and people recognized it so quickly. And the fact that you could demo it so easily and it created that, oh gosh, I really need this. Please don't take it away from me. I need this now that I have it, right? So I'm going to go to my next job and tell them, oh my gosh, we simply have to have PlanGrid, right? And I think that speaks volumes to the fact that you really understood the problem you were solving because you were in the field having that exact problem before you started the company. So that's wonderful. So, were you able to completely grow your sales on inbound all the way up through till the time that you exited?
No, we didn't have an outbound, BD team, but we definitely did a lot of marketing to get just, top of funnel going, and getting our brand out in the market and out in the world, especially when we went to international markets. Um, I mean, by that point, we went from nothing to 100 million in ARR in 8 years, so
Wow.
it was really nice early on, and we also had a freemium version, and then we got rid of the freemium version, I think year 5, and had this trial version, and there was a threshold that we knew they would hit within 3 weeks. So they'd try out the trial version, and then in 3 weeks, as they were putting more of their construction information into PlanGrid, you'd sort of hit that threshold and it'd lock you out in 3 weeks. And that was a point of, it was a compelling moment to convert or not to convert, but certainly they got a call from our sales team asking if we could help out.
All right. Well, let's talk about that sales team. So, what kind of sales organization did you build in order to support this inbound that you already had that was kind of viral? And then later on, support the marketing, interest that was stirred up so that somebody would call in from that. Let's talk about what your sales organization looked like and
Yeah,
how you
sure. And
built
of
that.
course, it evolved over the years. Early on, 5 million in ARR and less, this was founder-led sales. We actually had no quota-carrying reps in the building. Everyone who wasn't coding was, in operations. So you were either in operations or engineering. So if you were in operations, you were doing everything from customer support to QA/QC of software to collections to sales. They were the ones that were giving the demos, um, to customers, including myself. And yeah, we just got this awesome 5-minute demo script down. It was like a full recipe. All you had to do was spit out, go touch these buttons, spit this out. And we really learned that from Apple because for about a year in there, we were part of, my husband just walked in. I'm doing a podcast right now. I'm so sorry. Um, yeah, we were on every Apple iPad in the Apple stores, and the enterprise business team at the Apple stores, wrote these scripts, and we worked with them when we saw. They wrote 10-second scripts, so if an architect comes in, if a construction engineer comes in, if a superintendent comes in, or a building owner comes in, they would just spit out these 10-second scripts from PlanGrid that we wrote with them, and we really adopted that into our 5-minute demo. So the whole point is you're not gonna get people's attention. You're only going to ever get, maybe if you're lucky, 10 seconds of someone's attention. So you have to make sure that 10 seconds is massively valuable to them. And that was the entire 5-minute demo. And we would demo, we would convert them to paying. And mind you, they were very low deal sizes. I mean, the average price for PlanGrid at that point was, I don't know, it was like 300, $400 per seat per year. So if
Yeah,
we
so an
demoed to an end.
individual engineer could buy it on their own if they wanted
Exactly.
to. Right. Yeah.
Exactly, so we didn't have to get the whole project to adopt it. People would just swipe their credit cards and then call it a day. So we had this amazing ability to expand, mostly because our average deal sizes were so low. You just get more people onboarded onto PlanGrid. And, then as we went from 5 million in ARR to, let's say, 50 million in ARR, that was a direct sales team. We were, geo segmented. So, we had someone in California, we had a couple of people in California, we had someone in New York, we had someone in Chicago, someone in Texas, and we just sort of distributed our team by geolocation. And then after that, we, from 50 to 100 million in ARR, now, every dollar is harder to get. There's more competition. The early adopters, in SMB and lower mid-market, we really penetrated that market, and we need to go upstream towards the enterprise. And so part of that was building out new products, for the non-user buyer. This really sucked because we really wanted to build software for people who took showers at night. They had worked a hard days on the job site, and now they're showering at 9 p.m. at night, before they go back on the job site at 7 a.m. the next morning. We didn't want to write software for people who were taking showers in the morning, people who had nothing to do with the construction project, that maybe were in the office, just, they were the office people. They were just less interesting to us to build software for. But suddenly they care about having their own private, like, admin console where they can assign out certain accounts to certain people and check their usage, and we had to build all of that for other folks. So part of it was a product, like getting our product enterprise ready, and then the other part was building a team that could whale hunt, who could sell to these named accounts, these bigger companies, building
The
owners who are some of the.
Gilbanes of the world, right?
Yeah, exactly, and it was a more strategic sell because there are a lot more decision makers and there's more red tape, um, and I would say that was less interesting, but we got there, right? It was, I think the most fun years was definitely early on when we could just invent and create for the end user. But when it comes to enterprise software, as you know, the end user, the person who's going to benefit most from these solutions, they're not always the single program designer and they're not always the decision maker. This is why, having worked at a public company, I mean, I used all the winners. I won't name them, but all of it was such bad, slow software. It made our team less productive. And I just couldn't believe it. But this is how it's usually sold. It gets sold at the top, then it gets deployed to everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's like, who cares if you don't like it? We've already signed this 3-year deal for whatever reason because it checks off these 50 boxes.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the way that that works in corporate America, right? They pick some things without much input from the people who are actually going to use it. And luckily for you, though, this is a software that your end users would love. So it's understandable. What were some of your challenges moving from, selling to individuals, like you said, who could swipe their credit card? It was a fairly, easy deal. They saw the demo. They're like, I have to have this. They paid for it. And then to that point where you said, look, we've got to start selling to enterprise and doing it a bit differently. What were some of the challenges rolling into that?
Oh, so many. So I think selling to the end users, the people who we were building software for, it was such an easy conversation because we would walk in and we'd walk into the job site and you just be in this job site trailer and there's paper everywhere. It's like, I know that your life sucks. Like, we know how bad paper is. We know you're not looking at the current set. We know that you are not 100% confident. Your foremans and superintendents out there, your carpenters, your electricians are actually building off the current set right now. And we have a solution for you. Like, we are your trusted partners. We know this problem and we have this awesome solution to fix this problem that you're experiencing. And it's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, and you might have a chance at delivering your project on time and on schedule. Right? So the conversation was really simple because it was all about their pain points and our solution that completely helped alleviate those pains. When it went to enterprise and like selling to, I mean, also so many people, like the VP of operations, the CIO, the IT manager, maybe the training group because they were going to be responsible
Right.
for deploying.
And people who were never on a job site.
Yes, exactly. Even though they worked for construction companies.
Right. They've never been out there in the field with the engineers doing what engineers do. So they
It
look at it
yeah,
from a whole different perspective.
the challenge with that is it's just you just have to be more strategic in your conversation. Suddenly you are trying to figure out the political landscape. Like, who does this person report to? You're really trying to figure out what their pain is, what their desires are, what their ambitions are at their
Yeah,
company. And then you're trying to morph this product into and our solution into something that fits into their roles and their lives. Like, what is their pain point? It's not really obvious to me what pain point the VP of operations of a construction company has, right? They want to keep everyone safe. So, we would sort of just like have a conversation with them, literally ask them like, hey, what keeps you up at night these days? Like, what is your hardest problem right now? What do you want most for your company? And when you can actually put yourself in someone's shoes and try to empathize with them and really feel their pain and really feel their desires, then you can figure out if your thing is going to help their lives because no one's going to deploy your thing if it's not going to help them or be valuable to them in any way.
exactly. You are You're speaking my language, right? So I deal every day with companies who sell to companies that are 100 to 1,000 times their size, who are trying to understand all of these different people involved in making the decision and how they're going to win and look good, right, to everybody else when they make the decision in concert, right, to purchase this product and roll it out. And there's nothing easy about it. You really have to be a relationship builder, a good
Mhm.
listener. You have to be a guide. You have to be helpful. You have to understand how to solve. And, you knew what you were solving for on the site, right? You knew exactly what that was. But as you said, but what is the controller solving for? What is this HR person solving for? What is this other operations person who's involved? What are they solving for? And it is different than what the engineer on the site is solving for. So kudos to you for figuring it out. How did you do that? Did you bring in some people who were experts in a more complex enterprise sale? Did you figure it out yourselves, you and your co-founders, as you started to go upstream and talk to people? How did that work?
Yeah, I think we really benefited from not knowing anything in sales because we went in as construction engineers, my co-founder and I, and we it was really compelling. It's like we experienced this problem and this was so shitty, we decided to build a whole company around it, right? And be like, let me show you what we've built. So again, it was less about us being salespeople and more about us being their trusted partners, like their trusted consultants, their trusted software developers to help them do their jobs better. And I think it just came off, especially for the construction industry, it just came off very authentic because it was. And so selling to them was very easy in that way. Um, as we went upstream, I would say I learned everything from our enterprise sales reps, everything. How they handled the objections, just watching them firsthand. And this is why I think when it came to training new reps, like putting them in sales calls, in sales meetings with our best reps was very effective because there's no replacement for just seeing it happen in front of you. Seeing how they would just naturally and just seamlessly ask these questions that were completely beneficial to them, but in a way where they were just getting a lot of information and also just getting to hear more about. And people love, construction people love talking because the work is really hard, and it's really nice to just like talk as you work. So it was just really cool to be able to see us learn so much about the customers in a way that I never took time to understand. And then especially seeing like who the decision makers are, and for the ones who really wanted to help us deploy the software, our champions, they would just walk us through. They're just like, these are the decision makers, you're going to have to make sure you get this guy and this gal to say yes, and this is where the budget's going to come from. For people who actually want to buy your thing, they're going to be able to help you.
Yeah. Well, you had the grit, you had the authenticity, you cared about solving the problem. And so you didn't really need to understand the complex sale. You figured out pretty quickly that, oh, each of these people who are not in the field are going to have their own idea of why we're buying this software, right? And because you were just curious, and as an engineer, you would be, that's your job. You got to be curious. Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? How am I going to fix it if it doesn't work? What are we going to do next? Right. So you use those natural tendencies that you had and became very good sellers because of it. And I really like what you said about bringing the enterprise sellers in and letting them do what they did best and learning from them, and then letting them train the new sellers that were coming in and just hearing how they conducted the sale and how they moved about. How did you see the way your enterprise sellers would navigate these complex sales as different from the way you and the founders did it?
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. I remember being out in Chicago with one of, our reps at the time. He's actually at my new company, TigerEye, and we would walk through downtown Chicago, and he would show me, there's, like, so much construction in those years in
Yeah.
Chicago and every major metro area, and he would just point to a construction project, and he would say, "This is the building owner. This is the project it is. This is the general contractor on the project. There's actually a construction manager and owner's rep that's this firm. This is the architect. This is electrician. They haven't selected their drywall contractor yet. He had completely mapped out the ecosystem per construction project. And we would walk for hours through Chicago from meeting to meeting. And he would tell me about every single building and who the parties were, who was involved, who he knew, who he was getting intros from. And his strategy was, we're going to surround this job site with PlanGrid. Even if no one wants to adopt it and roll it out construction project wide, which would be 5,000 people at one time, we're going to make sure the electricians are using us, the drywallers are using us, the building owners are using us, the architects are using us until they can't deny that, we're going to be talking about an enterprise deal next year, because it doesn't make sense for 500 people to be paying us individually. It's just a waste of time.
Right. And it sounds like uh, you had an excellent seller, at least at the beginning. And I'm curious how you found them. So you're not from sales, right? And you're
Yeah.
running this company and doing this selling. And most founders are not that, shall we say, lucky to find a great salesperson right off the bat who knows how to do what you're describing. So, how did you do that? And what challenges were there in finding the first sellers that worked for you?
Yeah. So we tried out different profiles. I think the initial group, we tried out like 4 people from construction who were just like me, a construction engineer. It was like, "Well, I can sell PlanGrid, so let's just hire someone just like me, my background, I'm a construction engineer, and like let's have them just go in and talk about the problems and sell this." We tried out, so half of the team, our first, let's say 8 people, half of them were from construction and the other half were traditional B2B enterprise salespeople. Um, and it turned out, 2 years later, it turned out our construction folks were less great at selling, but what they were really good at was customer success, because they could speak the construction language, they understood the problem, they could help train them and adopt them. So we moved those folks into some CS like training role, and then we really focused on the B2B SaaS profile, because it's like working remotely for the first time, especially if you have a remote sales team. And like if you're a contractor in Alabama, you want to buy software from someone that sounds like you. So it's really important that we had people in different geographies. And there's just like a schedule that you have to have and a mindset that you have to have, for you to be a great salespeople working remotely, because sometimes working remotely feels like you're in solitary confinement, and it's really easy to slack off for 2 months until end of the quarter and then start working again. The best folks are working every single day. They're making calls every single day. They're building relationships every single day because they have a quota to work to. And the more you can do up front, the less you have to panic about later. And so I think like successful enterprise B2B SaaS folks, they just have that muscle that they've been working on for however many years.
Well, that sounds like it worked really well for you. And I think that being able to pivot like that as a CEO is so important. When you see these people have a lot of value to us, they're not the ones who can really go out and work these complex deals, but wow, they are really good once a deal is closed on onboarding and making sure people are successful using the product. And you made that shift. And I think that is so important. And of course, we all know today that it's not about how many customers we have, it's about how many successful customers we have, because
Mhm, mhm,
successful customers renew and they
mhm,
tell everyone else about us. And of course, that's how you started your business. All right, so
mhm.
you got a couple of good sellers. Did you hire them at the same time? It sounds like you hired some from construction and some from enterprise software sales at the same time. So you kind of had a group to compare. Is that how that worked?
Yeah, our sales operation strategy wasn't very strong, mostly because I didn't get a great sales ops leader in the building until year 7. Um, and we just doubled the sales team every year. So we started off with, let's say, 8 the first year, then 16, then 32, and then things started breaking down because we weren't building enough pipeline, and then I missed on the marketing leader search, and eventually our sales team by the time I left was over 100 folks, all over the world, because by that point we were a global business. And Going back to your question, yeah, I think our org changed every 6 months because the needs were different, and we would have new data points. We would learn more about our business. We'd learn more about our customers. We'd learn more about the competitive landscape. Everything's changing, and so every 6 months, we had to make changes and adapt. And what worked early on for us didn't work later on. We talk about product market fit. We absolutely nailed product market fit in the first few years. Well, suddenly, the buying decisions switched from the field to corporate office. The CIO said, "Hey, I am CIO of this construction firm. I should be the one choosing and selecting software for the company. I should be the one negotiating and getting the great deal, as they should. I should be the one making sure that these companies have the right security and privacy in place because this is our client's information." So you see buying power switch from the field to folks in the office. And now they're looking for something much different. They're looking for what software checks off these 50 things that I need. What is the platform solution here? We can't have 50 point solutions in the field. And what happened, I think, around 2016 is we woke up and we suddenly didn't have product market fit anymore
Mm,
because the competitive landscape changed, the market changed, the world changes. And this is why we had to move upstream towards the enterprise. We had to broaden our platform. Suddenly, we are basically building 5 different products with 5 different teams, and then enabling the sales team to sell these new things. It was very challenging for us. And that's what I didn't know going into this. I thought we had built this awesome product, and now we just, like, keep growing the company, keep getting it into the hands of builders. Well, in the end, if a job site, if construction folks were using our competitor software, it was usually because someone else told them they needed to. If they were
mm.
using PlanGrid, it's because they loved PlanGrid. Because we honestly didn't do that well selling to the enterprise and the corporate office. We did really well selling to the end users because they got to choose their software, and our thing was really good.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It just it's so interesting how agile you had to be. And I love that you really pivoted each time. And it wasn't without its challenges, as you said, but you figured it out. Hey, the buying decision has moved and we have to adjust to that. And so interesting, yeah, when it moves up again out of the field where the people in the field have no control or no voice in what the product is going to be that's going to be purchased, it changes the whole sale completely. So you grew it up to about 100 sellers, which is a lot, and for a company your size, right? Where at what point were you starting to think, you and your founder starting to think, we're going to exit from this? And
Mm.
or did you even think that, or was it a surprise when Adobe came and said, "Hey, we're interested in this"? Tell us about how that exit happened.
Yeah, it was Autodesk that approached us. We
Oh,
100
sorry.
million, yeah, 100 million in ARR was in sight. Um, I think we were at like 75 million AR, and we knew that in 2018, we were 2018, early 2019, we would hit 100 million ARR. And then at the board level, there is several conversations, especially, 8, 9 years into the company, our investors want a return on their investment.
Sure.
And so the conversations would switch to, is this a company we want to take public? Um, and what do we need to do to make that happen? Um, so there was conversations like that. At that time, I was listening to our competitors, our competitor being Autodesk, because they're a public company and they have earnings calls. So, I'm very much listening to our competitors' earnings calls. Also noticed that Andrew, the CEO, would talk a lot about construction. They had construction solutions. We would bump into them in the market, but their thing was like, it was very whatever. Like the end users weren't picking this tool. So we felt really confident about our thing. Um, and it was very clear that the CEO of Autodesk was very vocal about being um, what's the word? Acquisitive. Like they were going to make an acquisition in construction. 3 earnings calls in a row and no announcement. And I was surprised I didn't get a phone call yet. And so when we did get the phone call, it wasn't surprising because there's only a handful of companies that were big enough for them to call, probably less than that. And I think it's really important for other companies and CEOs to understand that companies are bought, they are not sold. I mean, the number of startups I've worked with that are in the middle of a fire, not enough revenue, spending too much money, and they're like, "I think we need to sell this company." It's like, why would anyone buy this
No.
company? Yeah, so companies are bought, they are not sold, and the best way to position yourself if you wanna sell your company is to build something that is valuable. The world really keeps track of revenue. So having a efficient business model with revenue, having a great team. Autodesk also bought us for our team. They really wanted to make a big stake in the ground and be in the construction space. They need a go-to-market team. We had a really good go-to-market team. They also need to be cutting edge on technology. We had a good engineering team. And so they bought us for our revenue, they bought us for our customers, and they bought us for our team. So we hit on all the points.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's just such a great story. And again, I'm sure it's not without its challenges, but you did have all the components that a company like Autodesk would be looking for, which made it probably a lot easier and probably made your investors very happy as well. So that company is gone to Autodesk. How many years has it been since you sold the company?
We signed the deal December 2018, and we joined early 2019 officially, and I was out of there by 2020. Startup founders make terrible public company employees.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt. I always say I'm completely unemployable, right? Once you've been a startup founder, you are now unemployable. All right. So that was an exciting ride. And you decided, okay, I'm ready for my next thing. So that's TigerEye. So tell us a little bit about how you moved from exiting from PlanGrid and into founding or co-founding. I believe you have a co-founder in TigerEye.
Yeah, the guy who walked in earlier, my husband is also my co-founder and CTO. This is our second company together. He's also a co-founder of PlanGrid. We just decided we were too young to retire. We like working. We always need a project to work on. Why not work on another startup? Mostly because we felt like we made a lot of mistakes at PlanGrid across the board, and we're very curious at if given the chance, would we make the same mistakes again? And also, there's nothing more stimulating and more fulfilling, I think, outside of parenthood than company building. It's challenging in so many ways. There's the people part, there's the company part, there's the competitor factor, there's a market factor, and everything has to land correctly. And we just wanted to do it again. So now we're building TigerEye. All I know how to do is build tools that make my last job better. PlanGrid was a tool I wish I had as a construction engineer. TigerEye is a tool I wish I had as a founder CEO. This product would have made the difference between us having to sell to Autodesk and us still running the company today as a standalone public company. Um, if I were to think about what we could have done to accelerate growth at PlanGrid, we did great. Like, it was meaningful for everyone involved. So I don't mean to say it was like a complete failure, but if I were to really think what could have made it leap step faster and grow faster and win in the market, because at the end of the day, we were number 2 in the market and we got bought by number 3. And now it's like, it's part of Autodesk. What would have made it number 1, I really think would have been just strategic software that helped us manage and lead our sales team better. So TigerEye helps sales leaders and the C-suite, and the whole company track and predict the future performance of a sales team. And it's the thing I wish I could have used as PlanGrid's co-founder and CEO.
Yeah, it's just such so much fun to hear when people like you solve the problems, right, that you have with some kind of software or some solution. And I just love that. And I want to learn more about that. We're out of time now, but we are definitely going to talk. so I can learn about that software that you built, because it will probably help a lot of the CEOs that I know and work with as well. So tell us where we can find you, and where can they find TigerEye? Because I know the CEOs who are listening just got a glimpse of that, and I'm sure they want more.
Yeah, there's only like one link. It's tigereye.com. That's the animal, and then the one of your two eyes, tiger eye, like the stone, like the song, tigereye.com, and you can learn more about what we're up to.
And how about on LinkedIn? Are you there for
Oh
people to
yeah,
connect
I'm on
with?
LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect.
Yeah, I know the CEOs listening always like to connect with the other
Yeah,
CEOs.
yeah.
So, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a happy one, right? In a lot of ways. But I love that you did mention some of the challenges, and also saying that, hey, thinking back to what might we have done had we known what we know now, right? And how might it have been different? And the fact that you were willing, with your partner, to get out there and go ahead and try again. I just love that. Again, it's that grit, right? And that drive to solve. And I think that's, partly the engineer in you, and just partly who you are, which, again, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me, Alice. I've had a great conversation.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.